I think for me in particular, it's been helpful to know how I am reactive, or the way that I behave, or the way that I run away, or the way I avoid, or all of these things because of my number and what happened, And so that for me is why I think it's really holistic. It's not just this make yourself feel better about yourself to explain all the ways, which kind of feels like it almost justifies your behavior. But the Enneagram really calls you out when you are healthy. Here's what your healthiest form of who you are. You could be the fullest of who you are. And when you're unhealthy or you're in stress or trauma.
Welcome to the Global Fringe podcast, hosted by April Diaz. This is a show featuring leading voices from the fringe, mostly women and people of color, who are on the journey to live and lead with wholeness. This season will guide you on your own journey towards wholeness in body, mind, and spirit, in full partnership with men. It's time.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Global Fringe, you guys. This is the first official episode in season 3. Last week was a little bit of a teaser as we talked about how we're pivoting this season to talk more specifically about wholeness and partnership. And I could not be happier to have on my dear ladybug friend, Irene Cho. Irene, thank you so much for coming back.
This is so exciting. I love being here. I love talking with you.
Me too. We talk every day, all day, most every day. So it's a little funny to bring people into like a more formal conversation, but hopefully they'll just get a little sneak peek into our friendship. But one thing y'all need to know about Irene is she is the first guest of the Global Fringe to have 2 appearances. This is like record breaking. There's no one else that I have asked. Yeah, there's no one else I've asked to do 2 episodes. And you were on the very first season. I think you were on like episode 3. So if you guys have not heard her on season 1, you need to go back to that one because Irene let it loose. She talked about being angry as a woman of color specifically, but her anger is because she cares. So that's what we call the episode. I'm angry because I care. And it was so good. And I've known you for a long time, my friends. And the times that you get angriest are because you care most about whatever it is that you are waxing eloquently about. So you're not going to get angry in this episode. You're going to get excited and happy because we're talking about something that we both love. We spend a lot of time in our friendship talking about the Enneagram. And we referred to the Enneagram at a few different points in the last couple of seasons of this podcast. But I wanted to start this season talking about the Enneagram as a tool for transformation, because that's what it is, I think, best for, is like, how do you become the best, fullest version of yourself? And the Enneagram is so powerful for that. And I want you to help us kind of unravel a bit. What does it look like for us to be whole or to pursue wholeness in life and leadership through the lens of the Enneagram? So if you could kind of at first just talk a little bit about how you got into the Enneagram, maybe what your number is, and also just why you think this is such a great tool for transformation.
Oh, I am not angry. This is a tool I have really found has spoken into my life and given me insight, in particular when dealing with conflict and dealing with other people. When, there are different situations by which people approach and problem solve or think through or have different perspectives. I think the Enneagram has been super helpful because of the fact that it brings a holistic just understanding that we all work together. And that this is why I even love how it's formed. It's very circular. It's not a linear path form. It's not a chart, in that sense. And the way that it intersects, where each number integrates or disintegrates, the subtypes replicate some of the others. And so I think, I love the Myers-Briggs for the longest time. I identify hardcore as an INFJ. And I think, there's the DISC profile, there's the strengths finders, there's all of the personality things and leadership tools that one could possibly have taken. I've done it all. And I love them. This is something by which, I am astrologically a Cancer person. I love like all things interpersonal related. And so the Enneagram for me, one of the things that I love in particular is looking and meshing it and seeing how it overlays and connects even with these other personality studies or tests that we look into. So I love the fact that I am an INFJ, but that because my Enneagram number is a 9-wing 1, that like if you Google it and you look it up, there are Myers-Briggs personality types where they say most INFJs are either 2s or 4s. And so me being a 9-wing 8 makes me kind of not only is our INFJs a 1% of like all population, but then to be a 9-wing 8 as an INFJ, it just was so enlightening for me of, oh, okay, that's why even as an INFJ, I seem more hardcore than others. Yeah. I have these other elements. And so I love integrating it in that manner. And so when I look at the Enneagram, it's been so helpful identifying myself. What are my motivations? What are my intentions? Yeah. Why do I run away? What's happening with me? I think when we first took the test, the biggest part that I loved was the health scale of what does your number act like when it's unhealthy and when it's healthy. And I think a lot of other personality tests or a lot of other personality, examinations tend to lean towards the positive, right? And so you're like this, and that's why these are your strengths, and that's all great. But, I think for me in particular, it's been helpful to know how I am reactive or the way that I behave or the way that I run away or the way I avoid or all of these things because of my number and what happens. And so that for me is why I think it's really holistic. It's not just this, make yourself feel better about yourself to explain all the ways, which kind of feels like it almost justifies your behavior. Yeah, totally. But the Enneagram really calls you out when you are healthy. Here's what your healthiest form of who you are. You could be the fullest of who you are. And when you're unhealthy or you're in stress or trauma, like this is what you're going to spiral into. And that's, I think, the biggest part of, and this is why I say I think it's so super helpful with conflict. Even my husband, who is a hardcore 8, and as my friend says, my wing 8 is super hyper buff, right? And so as we are 3 years into our marriage, older single people that got married, we say to each other sometimes, we're like, stop 8ing me, like stop being an 8 to me. And he says the exact same thing to me because we, as both people who have been leaders most of our career as single people, to come into a marriage where we now have to put that aside and not play that role as, wife and husband, that has been a really big stretch for both of us. Like the vulnerability that's required. Like now, because of the Enneagram, I have language to understand why I'm so resistant when he pushes into me. My 9-ness just flares up and I just want to cave and go into a hole. And in the past, I would have thought it's just my introversion, but it's really not. It's because of the way the 9 is. We don't work well under massive conflict. We're my 8-wing gives me great ability to deal with confrontation, but it's hilarious. Before I knew about the Enneagram, I had concluded of myself when I was examining, I said, actually people are like, oh, you're so good at confronting, Irene. You're so good with conflict. I'm like, oh, no. I'm actually terrible with conflict. I'm great with confrontation. And I didn't even know about the Enneagram at that time. And so when I find out about the 9, and hilariously, my husband and my mom had a massive conflict before our wedding happened. And he, in the midst of our argument, he was saying to me, you are not helping the situation. You are triangulating. And I was like, no, I am not. What is that? And then I find out about the Enneagram 9 first weakness, right? When first thing that happens when 9s go into stress, triangulation. Like, oh, dang. So, I had to apologize to my husband, and like I had to own up to the fact that I did not handle their conflict well, because it was my mother who is my stronghold, my foundation. Like, she's raised me, she's been my shepherdess and my mentor and guide. And this man who I absolutely love and adore, who is now entering into my life in the most vulnerable, these two massively important people in my life, were having conflict. As a 9, of course I'm going to crumble into a melted ball of massive anxiety. Like, it was terrible. And I have full language now of why I was unable to handle that conflict and what I could have done better, how I should have moved forward, what it was that caused me to be triggered, etc. So it's really has been one of the most helpful tools in dealing like interpersonally, people to people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You just, I think, delved into like how complex and beautiful the Enneagram is, because people are so complex and beautiful.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the reasons I fell in love with it, is it doesn't put people into these boxes of because you are an INFJ or I am an ENFJ, because I am an ENFJ, this is X, Y, and Z what I'm like. There gives so much room and margin for how your wings play into who you are, where you
your
move,
subtypes.
Your subtypes, your stress, your integration. So I started studying the Enneagram about 5 or 6 years ago. I've literally read probably thousands of pages of books, hundreds and hundreds of hours. And in a lot of ways, I still feel like a novice, because people are just such a big mystery, to understand. And I use it in all of my coaching now, because I think, especially for leaders, if you are going to lead with wholeness, if you're going to lead in partnership, you've got to be able to understand what you are bringing to the table, how you are engaging the people that are around you, and doing it from the place of, just doing your best to do it from a place of health. And so I think that our leadership communities would be so much better if people dove into this. So what I want to spend the bulk of my time with you on today is identifying like what is one opportunity and what is one warning for each of the 9 types. So if you're already feeling lost in the conversation, just kind of be okay with that, wander in the muck with us right now. And at the end, we're going to recommend some resources that you can dive into and learn some more. I think that it is totally worth it. And I'm so glad that we're starting this season talking about who we are as people, not just in our behaviors, but also in our core motivations, our fears, the emotions that drive us, and how that really plays out in our relationships with others. So can we start with the Enneagram 1?
Yes. I do want to say caveat as well. And, first of all, I am not a certified trainer. There are people who are certified trainers and coaches in the Enneagram. So if you could find folks like that who can work with you through the process, by all means, please do that. I am sharing from my own experience. Again, as an INFJ person, I'm very proud that I have very superpower, crazy, weird insight into things. So I'm just going based on that. But I'm also a novice in the learning process. Also know that your ethnicity, your cultural background, your geographical background, your birth order, your age, your marital status, how long you've been married, your career, all these things impact and are influenced by the Enneagram. So it's, again, as April
super
was saying,
dynamic.
Yes. So just know that you have to hold all these things together in a very, I don't ever want to say loosey-goosey way, but in a very open-handed, they are very interwoven together kind of thing. So I just want to say that. And I know a lot of people say that it's not a personality examination, which, is 100% true. It's more of a being, a wholeness of who you are. It's not again, like you said, pegging of a personality type. So just wanted to lay that out there. Okay. So ones, and another caveat, second caveat is I'm probably way more familiar with 1s, 2s, 3s, 7, 8s, and 9s. The 4, 5, and 6s are a little bit fuzzier for me because I don't really have a lot of 4, 5, and 6s in my life.
I do. So
yes. So
I'm going to add a little dynamic.
Yes. Okay, so recently I had started to conclude because I really wanted to figure out what my mom was. And she's a very strong, dynamic woman. And I started to conclude that she was a one after really thinking through all the different types and distinguishments between a 1, 3, and an 8 in particular, because I feel like those are the most vocally headstrong of the three numbers. And I had her take the test. I had to do some translation of the words, etc. But she came out a one. I was correct. She is a one. So as a person, as the only daughter of a one, I have had 45 years of insight of living with a one, in particular as a 9. Okay, so and I say this, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I did this whole extensive MCU Enneagram type. And the typical upfront person you would think would be a one is Captain America. So if you know of anything, we also, I think Game of Thrones, we did one, and we were suspicious. The biggest person we were suspicious of being a one is what's her name? Arya. So, it's very much here's the difference between a 1 and an 8 in particular. Ones really focus on what the system has declared to be righteousness and what is right and wrong. And that's different from an 8, which we can dive into later in particular. But so, ones are our rule keepers. They are, and I don't say that in a negative way. I think, ones should be proud of their justice-minded, what is fair, what is right, what is good, that mindset. And so embrace that. Don't feel ashamed by that. I think in our society, we're always talking about the rule breakers, and we're talking about the people who, expand and risk takers and pioneers in particular in our American culture. And one can maybe feel ashamed that they are the naysayers of the group. Right. They're the ones that kind of call out what should be done and what ought to be done. And I think you should embrace that about yourself. The obvious negative side of that is ones tend to be more rigid. Ones are sometimes incapable of being flexible. Yeah. In the self-care, I wrote a self-care toolkit for urban leaders with the Fuller Youth Institute, which I'm hoping they publish at some point. But one of the self-care things about ones is that, you need to learn to laugh, and not take everything so seriously. And so I love this section. I love the character arc of Captain America because we see him go from like language, please, in the Avengers, right, all the way to where he meets himself face to face, his replica, and he's like, oh shit, right? He drops the passport, and the original Captain America that he's fighting, he's like, I could do this all day. And like the character who we have followed through over the last 19 years, he's like, yeah, I know, right? He sees himself and sees the rigidity of his old form. And so I think ones need to learn to embrace how to laugh, how to relax. Some of the self-care stuff is it's okay that you like organization. It's okay that you like structure, but also find moments by which you are going to chuck your structure and go something on the fly, and just stretch yourself in that way. So that's the one. I have so much that I can say about ones, but I think that's the top 2 that we really talk about.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like the opportunity is the rules actually are important. Like I was listening to a friend a couple of weeks ago talk about how actually leaders need to be more paranoid. And if we had leaders in place that like look to how are the decisions that I'm making today going to impact 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? What are the implications of this? So we need rules and policies and procedures and systems that are both going to safeguard what it is that we are doing in our work, but also like in our own character and integrity. I think ones create really good opportunity for us to have rules that hem us in, that provide guardrails. But then the warning is that they're supposed to serve the people, right? Like all of those rules are supposed to serve the system, the humans that they are representing, not that they are the ends in and of themselves.
Yes, because ones can tend to become pharisaic, and that's or legalistic or, rigid in that sense. And so if the law takes over the spirit of the law, then that's not good.
Yep. That's great. All right. Tell us about 2s.
Okay. So 2s and 9s are very similar. It was funny because when I took the test, I came out a 9 and 2 equally. My score point was equal, and then the right one below it, 1 point off, was an 8. And 2s and 9s tend to come out similarly. A lot of 9s you actually test out as 2s, but when I looked at the unhealthiness of 2s, the motivations are very different. So just know that 2s are the helper, right? And so the great positive thing about 2s is they're your friend who will always be there. If you are in a bind, if you need help, if you are needing support, any of the things, if you're needing food, if you're needing all the things, the 2 are your BFFs that will never abandon you. They're so loyal in that sense. And they're a joy. I am so protective of 2s as a 9. I'm just always like, get off my 2 person. And the downside of 2s, their motivation, which is different from 9s, is they need to be needed. And so if they feel unneeded, they can become manipulative. They can become selfish. They can become their service to the world isn't necessarily always altruistic, right? The negative side of it is if they are unwhole and unhealed, and they have trauma and all these things, their desire to be needed can be smothering to other people. So just know, as a 2, you should be very aware of what your motivations are. Am I really wanting to help this person? Is this person really needing my help? Or am I shoving myself on this person in the name of, I'm here to help you, right? Yeah. I had a friend who, she was dating someone, and he was in very, very intense examination period. And he was like, I can't see you for 2 weeks. So we need to not hang out or whatever. And she ended up baking cookies and taking it to him, and he was super upset, and he rejected the cookies. And she came back, and she was crying, and she was all lamenting about it. And I sat there and listened to her, as she was crying throughout this whole thing, and what a jerk he was and all these things. And I was like, why did you take him cookies? He was so specific with you about what he needed. You were being manipulative. And again, this was before I knew about the Enneagram, right? And I believe she's a 3-wing too. So her 2-wing, I think, is really strong. And she was like, what are you talking about? And it took her 5 years to fully understand what I meant by she was being manipulative. And you didn't actually want to bake him cookies because it was good for him. What was good for him was what he said was good for him, right? And you didn't listen, and instead you insisted, and you wrapped it up in this quote unquote nice gift, because she was like, who doesn't like baked cookies? And I was like, he didn't. You were fully not listening to him. And that's what 2s tend to do. And they also burn themselves out because they're so busy wanting to be needed. They're so busy needing to be needed, that they end up saying yes to everything. And they really need to examine that motivation of all of it, because they will end up becoming, so 2s, when they get unhealthy, they disintegrate to an 8. And they become blameful. Then it's like, I'm here to help everyone, and nobody appreciates me, so forget everybody. They just this massive mode of unhealthiness. And I know a lot of people who are in ministry and who are serving and in leadership are 2s, and so they're going to probably hear this and be like, oh my God, stop! I really it hurts so much. But just know that you need to every day constantly examine what are your motivations. Why are you trying to help this person? Why are you saying yes to this? Is this something you should be saying yes to? Or do you need to say no so that you can say yes to yourself?
Great. So the opportunity could be meeting some of the world's deepest needs, aware of them and meeting them. The warning is your service becomes manipulative and self-serving, not actually other-centered. And smothering. And you need to burn out then. So that's those are darknesses. All right. Achiever.
Oh, 3. Okay. So 3s are most leaders. So many leaders are 3s because they're the achievers of the world.
Right.
The best thing about 3s, they can accomplish so much. They excel. They are amazing people. They're brilliant. They're smart. Obviously, downside of an achiever, narcissistic, self-centered. The ends justify the means. I just watched The Greatest Showman. I said every 3 in the world needs to watch The Greatest Showman, because 3s tend to detach from their emotions. They detach from empathy. Everything about what they need to accomplish is what's most important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that song "Never Enough" in The Greatest Showman is like such this beautiful like self-awareness moment for him of like he is literally conquering the world and doing all this beautiful, amazing, innovative stuff and is, you know, charting all kinds of new ground, and but it's never enough, and like everything is falling apart, and there's this like deep chasm inside of this was all for him. It wasn't for his family. It wasn't for bringing beautiful things to the world. It was for his own.
Yeah.
So yes.
And even if it was initially, which is what a lot of 3s confuse, they're like, their initial motivation and intention was good. It was for the benefit of the people, but they got lost in the midst of it because the achievement and success was so delicious for them that ends up becoming what is the most important in that. And so 3s need to every day examine what, again, is their motivation. Why are they like continually pushing for more? Because 3s tend to do that. They can't be satisfied with what is enough now. They need, okay, now that I've hit this, what's my next goal? What's my next marker? What's my next marker? And they tend to be project oriented and program oriented, not people oriented, because the people are the means to get to there.
All right. Type 4, the individualist. What's the opportunity?
Okay, so I think individualists, obviously, they're wonderful. Most individualists are creatives. You know, they bring a unique perspective. They like being unique. And so this is why most INFJs are 4s. And I have a few friends that are 4s. I adore them. I sit at their feet and just listen to them, you know, just spew and think and ideate. It's wonderful. 4s, obviously, their whole thing is they're so aware of their uniqueness, and then it becomes a woe is me. Like it's so like, I'm so different. Oh, like, no, I don't belong anywhere. Like all of these things, and they're very melancholy. They're very the sky is falling in that sense of, it's not a everything in the world sky is falling like 6s. It's very much a, you know, self-inflicted, the sky is falling. Yes. About all the things. So
I have a really dear friend who is a 4, and one of the things that 4s I think have the greatest opportunity for the world, for leadership, is they can hold other people's pain without having to fix it. They sit with others' pain. Like my friend Erin, she is one of the first people that I call when I'm in a really dark place, because I just know she will listen, she will hold me, she will sit with me, and she won't give me 5 action steps, you know, which is what I do. Both in my Enneagram, in my work. Like I'm always like, okay, what are the things that we're going to do? Like, we need to move past this. How are we going to grow? Like, what are we going to learn? And she just will sit. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in that, in a world that is all about what is next. So, but definitely the like getting totally absorbed and just swallowed up in emotion and in the pain and suffering can be really paralyzing for 4s. So that they don't do anything. There's not a contribution that is made. And I think that's why we do see a lot of creatives, artists as 4s, creating really beautiful things, but then also a warning alongside of that is the care for yourself, soul care stuff becomes critical for 4s because they're feeling and absorbing it.
Because they disintegrate to 2. They disintegrate to 2. So then they start going to self-denial because they're internally imploding.
All right, fine. We got to move on. The investigator.
Okay. So I don't know, April, do you want to share, you know, knowing very intimately a 5?
I sleep with a man who is a 5 with a 4 wing, and he is so so stereotypically investigator. I think the opportunity for the investigator is that they are observers to the nth degree. And so Brian is an incredible observationist of what is happening in the world. And I have come to trust his gut about people, about situations, about circumstances, and because he is taking in all this information all the time like a sponge, he just has insight that I am moving way too fast, way too furious through the world to truly absorb. And so he gives such incredible wisdom, and there's such depth when he speaks, which is not all the time. He's a pretty quiet dude. But when he speaks, I have come to really trust his intuition and his wisdom because he has been observing. The warning side of it, the darker side of it, is fives can get stuck. Because they're taking all of it in, it can cause them to be paralyzed, similar to a four, and not take action, and not to do what it is that they know to do, because they're just waiting for another piece of information to add to their collection of knowledge.
Yeah.
You want to add anything, or should we move to sixes?
Yes. So good. I love it.
I wish that we would have had the Enneagram when we got married 18 years ago, because it would have saved us so much hassle and just angst, because we are so different from each other. But I've come to really appreciate his gifts. So tell us about a six, the loyalist.
The loyalist, really, they are our systems creator. They love systems. They love structure, in the sense, it's not like a one where there are rules. It's more about strategic systems. And so if you have a plan, if you have an exit plan, if you have an emergency plan, I know about six because nines disintegrate into six. We become the warriors. So I think if you know a six, they tend to be the warrior people, but not in the way ones are warriors. And I don't mean warriors, I mean warriors. And so sixes tend to be the people who are like, well, how many exits does the plane have? Do you have a just in case pack? Do you have an emergency kit? Do you have this? Like all these things that you need. Like they're the person who you go to and you're like, hey, I don't have any wet wipes, and then boom, they like pull it out of their packet. So most sixes are that. You absolutely want to have a six on your team. You want to have, somebody who will be there to be your naysayer, in the sense of, have you thought about this? What's going to happen if the business falls through? What's going to happen if this project loses $3 million? Like, who are the people in your life who are waving the yellow flag all around, and doing that? The downside of sixes tend to be that they're kind of similar to fives, in that, they're all up in their head most of the time, and they're not very good at executing. So if you are a business leader, if you are a woman in particular who's a six, just know this about yourself. And there are things like the nine, we have things that we need to know as a leader. Maybe you need somebody who is going to be your counterpart of being the visionary, of being the creative, of being the one who kind of stretches you to go out there and not just be safe in the things that you are leading and doing. And so just be aware of that you tend to become paralyzed with your overly concerns of the sky is falling, of like what could happen, not necessarily as a four, like internally the sky is falling, but more of like, this all could go to hell and I'm planning for it, and now I don't even want to go outside today because the apocalypse is going to happen, right? But I have my emergency pack, so I'm all good. So we're just not going to move. We're just going to live here in this bunker.
You and I have both worked with a six, our friend Jen, who is like, just has been the greatest gift to me as a six. Because I don't operate like this at all. And that is how you are describing the six is exactly who she is. And she's a phenomenal leader and team member, because she knows these things about herself and is taking proactive steps to like live and lead with wholeness in it. So yeah, these are amazing.
Yeah. So just know the strength you bring in with your naysaying, yellow flag waving. It's a strength. It's not a shameful thing.
Yes, good. All right, number 7, type 7, the enthusiast.
Yes. Okay. So obviously, we all love to be around sevens because they're the life of the party. They are super creative. All the ideas. The world is their oyster. The sky is the limit. There's beyond the sky. What can happen in the universe and space? Um, they're a little crazy out there. As a J personality, sevens kind of freak me out sometimes because there's zero limitations to them. The downside of sevens is obviously they can come across as very flighty and unstructured. But also the biggest, I think, internally, sevens, you need to understand your dark side. Sometimes when sevens tend to be super uppity and positive, it's because they don't want to deal with what's on the underbelly. And so I think, you have leaders who are really dynamic and charismatic, but we talk about this with especially American evangelicalism. We don't talk about lament. We don't deal with death. We want everything to be a Disney adventure. Everything has a happy ending and everything is beautiful. And, like all of these things, the Little Mermaid goes and runs off with a prince. And it's like, no, the original, she sacrificed her life for the sake of love and she's dead, right? So like, la, 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 no, we don't want to hear that. Everything is going to be great, and this is all going to be wonderful and exciting and fun, and it's all going to be a party. And a lot of that is hiding or masking an actual huge undercurrent of, rapid white water that's like going down, and like a split second when they start to face that, like everything can crumble down. And so sevens, it's okay like to lean into lament. It's, figure out in your beautiful positivity that you bring and hopefulness and inspiration that you bring to the table. Don't be afraid of the underbelly by which God is both life and death, like in the sense that he mourns death with us. Yeah. He mourns the fact that there's sin in our life. He mourns and laments, and God doesn't shy away from that. Yeah. She is very embracing of all that is holistically in life. And that's okay. Yeah. It's okay that one day our dog is going to pass away, but how do we enjoy those moments? And you're so good at living the life of enjoying that. And yet, you need to face what is going to eventually come down the pipeline at some point, because we learn in pain. Yeah. We learn in suffering. And if we avoid suffering and pain, we don't improve as human beings, as communities. It can't all be Disney adventures. We can't get the prize all the time. The prize is sometimes that we've lost, and that makes us sometimes the most wise of all people. And if we avoid that, then we aren't being good leaders.
Yeah. So the opportunity for sevens is that there are creative ideas. So if you ever start to feel stuck, go hang out with a seven, because they will help you to just break through those kind of internal barriers. But the warning is, running from pain and structure does not do our souls any good. And they don't make us the kinds of leaders that will allow us to empathize and connect with others. So engaging that is really important for sevens. All right. We are closing. We are coming towards a wrap here. The 8, the challenger. Tell us.
Challenger, being married to an 8, and you are an 8. I think, 8s are like 3s. They are world changers. And a lot of 3s think that they're 8s. They actually aren't. But 8s, ironically, don't really actually identify that much as 3s. And so 8s are, how they're different from 3s is that it's not necessarily about achievement. It's about the integrity of accomplishing what they have conviction for. And that's why everyone says you either have Hitler or Gandhi, right? Those are 8s. And so they could be that extreme. And that's painful to hear, I know. But like, Hitler was very convicted that what he believed was right. And the distinction between 8s and 1s, for example, is that 1s are very strong-minded with what is righteous. But it is that righteousness is set by society, is set by what the system has been made to be. 8s do not give a rat's ass about what is set. If anything, they want to break that system down, because they're like, all systems and rules are stupid and everything should go according to what I believe should happen. And so, I know And so again, that means there are no barriers with eights. They can dream big. They can change. They're going to change the world. And then the biggest problem with eights is they become so focused on their conviction and what they need to do, they completely disconnect from empathy. They, again, like threes who disconnect from empathy and people because of achievements. Eights disconnect from empathy and people because of their conviction. It's not because they have to achieve it. It's because they have to. And this is like Andrea Smith and I had a very big debate about, is Thanos from MCU a 1 or an 8? She gives very, very, very good arguments of him being a 1, self-preserving subtype 8. Self-preserving 1 that they sometimes manifest as an 8. But I still argue at the end of the day, Thanos says it over and over again. He's like, this is my destiny. This is what has to be done because this is what I've been born to do. And 8s have that. And so they end up disconnecting from humans. The focus, the objective, the goal becomes all that is important, and they lose everything in the journey in the midst of that. And so they may accomplish it like Thanos does at the end of the movie, where he snaps and he does his job, but he's alone, and he finds satisfaction in that. That's fine for him, and that could be the dark side of 8s, is they don't even care that they're alone at the end because they have accomplished what they believe they have been born to accomplish. And so it's okay to be alone. It's okay that they've lost everything in the midst of it because they've achieved that. And that, from every other perspective, is sad. It really is, because at the end of the day, what are we as humans if all that we are our convictions and goal achievements? And so 8s need to be really cautious of that. Don't lose perspective along the way. And this is why 8s and 3s tend to look so similar. Because my husband watched The Greatest Showman, and he's just been nonstop listening to the soundtrack because for him as well. And I keep saying, like, as your spouse who has a strong 8 wing, and I have my own convictions and desires to accomplish, but like I keep wanting him to know, like as I was watching it, I felt like his wife, right? Of, like, bring me along. Don't, like, even at the end when she said, I would always take the risk with you, but we did it together. And the fact that he didn't confer with her, he didn't involve her in the process, it lacked vulnerability. It just became consumed by his objective. And
so good. I would love to add on to that, but we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the 9. So I'm an 8, you're a 9.
Nice.
Some of my favorite people are 9s. So tell us what's an opportunity and what's a warning.
Yes. So 9s, the EnneaGram podcast, which is whom I love, one of the gals came on, she's a 9-wing 1, I'm a 9-wing 8. And she said, though, 9s are a slow to burn that fizzles out.
Oh my gosh.
We're also low energy sometimes. But when we become healthy, we integrate to 3. And that's why I was like, because I have competitiveness, I have achieverness, but I also, it's very much motivated by simply what I believe in. Now, we are the peacemaker, so we make great diplomats. We are so good at empathy. We're so good at seeing the other side. But seeing the other side then paralyzes us. We are the people in the world that think there are too many options because we see all the options. We see all sides of the argument. I believe a leader in one of the institutions, that I know of well is a 9. And I say this all the time. There are times when you need a wartime consigliere, right? They say this in The Godfather. You need a wartime consigliere, and sometimes you need a peacetime consigliere. And when it comes time to have a wartime consigliere, 9s, we suck. Like, we're just the worst because we triangulate and we are paralyzed by the fact that we want to please everyone. And that means not everyone. That means we're going to disappoint everyone. And we can't live with that. We just become completely paralyzed. And so 9s just know when conflict arises, you have to step up to the plate. That means you got to make hard calls. It means like you're going to have to make decisions, and people aren't going to like you, and that is okay, right? And so lean into that strength, and don't run away from it. Don't be fearful of it. Don't avoid it. Oh dear God, all the avoidance that I just I want it to pray. I want to pray it away. I want just leave it to God, and God will take care of all things. And I just have to sit here and be a good little girl, and all things will work out. Yay! No, it does not. I have to solve my problems. I have to dig the holes. I have to build the walls. I have to build the structures. I have to make the decisions. I have to fire people. I have to do these things that are so freaking painful, because I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be peaceful. I want everybody to be content. That's just not the reality of the world that we live in.
Okay, so good. We are going to create a cheat sheet for you all. It'll be available on azerandco.com/podcast. And we'll put it in the show notes, but we're going to take all of the stuff that Irene and I just blurbed out and make it available so that you can have it as a little bit of a checklist for yourself, is just like a little warning. And it's not just good for you. Part of what is so beautiful about the Enneagram is in how you work with others, how you relate to others. It's been weaved into all of our conversation here. So in your leadership, in your life, gosh, you are constantly interacting with people. And so these things are going to be valuable as you work with others to help them, to help yourself be more full. So that's really good. We're also going to link to some of our best resources to help you find your type and to help to guide you further on your transformational pathway. But Irene, can you just give like 2 or 3 of your faves?
I think the best ones are The Road Back to You and what's the other one? Suzanne's one, The Path Between Us. Yes, those are the most helpful. I have women of color who are hopefully going to be writing more about the Enneagram, because most everyone, and by most I mean all people who have written about it, who've been published, are white, in particular white women. And there's just a deeper, different perspective when it comes to women of color. And so Karen Gonzalez, who has written The God Who Sees Us, she just published it. I've been like bothering her because she leads a workshop a lot of times about the Enneagram self-care. And I'm like, when are you going to do a book? When are you going to do a book? And she's like, after this one. So she just published her book right now on immigration, and it's wonderful. But I'm hoping that she at some point brings it down the pipeline where she's going to publish something, and other women of color as well. So I would definitely, do some Google searches and just follow women of color in particular who have done certification, who've gotten good insight into the Enneagram, because their ethnic background and cultural backgrounds brings a whole different perspective to this
I love
process.
It. The other recommendation I would have is on the Enneagram Institute's website, there is a place for you to subscribe to the Ennea Thought of the Day. And you can subscribe to 2. So I recommend for folks to either subscribe to their primary type and their wing, or if they are married or have a partner, to subscribe to their primary type and then their partner's type, because it is just kind of like a daily dose. It's kind of like a vitamin, right? It's like you take your supplement every day to just kind of like help your body stay regulated. That's what the Ennea Thought of the Day does. And sometimes it's crazy helpful, and I'm like, want to throw my phone against the wall, like, you don't know me, and or I want to like show it to Brian and be like, this is you. But it is a really good, just kind of an ongoing self-awareness, growth, discovery process. So that would be top rec.
And the app is good as well. I have the app on my phone. It's the EnneaApp. The icon is green. I think there's a couple of them, but I like the green one. A friend who's a therapist who's certified, she actually recommended it. I just like, it doesn't give you dailies necessarily, but it definitely is available and gives you descriptions and like helps remind you of like what your lines are, what you disintegrate to and what you integrate to. And so for me, like every day, I've just been like, how can I channel my threeness? How can I continually be productive and proactive in things, and not disintegrate into my sickness and be like, my business plan is so overwhelming. This is not going to fail. Forget it. I'm just going to watch TV for 5 hours. Right. Which I'm totally going to do.
We will link to all of that in the show notes. Where can the people find you and the work that you're doing, Irene?
So I'm starting a company as a 9, which is craziness. So go to findingtheinbetween.com. And you can sign up there. We are working on launching the website very soon. And all the social media is Irene M, as in Michelle, Cho. So Irene M Cho. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook is usually more of my like deeper, longer insights. Twitter is more my snarky, kind of cynical, sassy, calling out stuff. I am a little bit more raw truth telling on Twitter than I am on Facebook, and then Instagram is more fun stuff. And
awesome.
yeah, so
all right. So every guest this season, I'm asking 3 questions, and you need to give me like 60 seconds or less, like real quick. Okay. Here's the first one. What does it look like for women to be warriors?
I think it means that we collaborate together and we build greater things together, and we're stronger with one another.
That's what you and I are doing every day, and I love that.
Yep.
What's the number one practice that leads you personally towards wholeness?
Saying no, as an INFJ. Learning to say no and not feeling obligated and guilty to do all the things and do everybody else's homework assignment before I do my stuff. Good.
And then last one, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want for men to encourage partnership with women?
Give us platform, put us on the stage, put us in the writing rooms, put us in the leadership positions. Let us make the calls. You know, we aren't limited to being VPs or secretaries or coffee makers or, you know, all these things. We should be front and center. And you have platform and opportunity. And so please, by all means, somehow figure out ways by which we can collaborate together and share equal platform spaces, not be your assistant to accomplish your dream.
I love it. Well, I'm glad that you were my second appearance on the Global Fringe, my friend. You are so wise and smart and sassy, and I love. You teach me things every single day, and you make my life better. So I'm grateful that the people of the world, people of the Global Fringe, got to hear a little bit about how the Enneagram works in our journeys towards wholeness and transformation. So thanks for sharing what it is that you've learned with us, and you're just the best. I love you lots. All right.
You.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Global Fringe. Help us spread the word by rating and reviewing and sharing with your people. If you're excited about this season, become a Patreon on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Hey friends, do you love podcasts like the one you just listened to? Have you ever dreamed about having your own? Well, my name is Michael and I work for TruthWork Media. We believe that everyone has a story and every story deserves a podcast. Let us help you get started. Look us up at www.truthworkmedia.com, fill out our questionnaire, and I'll schedule a time to talk. It's really that easy. TruthWork Media. Everyone has a story. Yours needs a podcast.